5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ryan Chatfield Show. I'm your host, Ryan Chatfield, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to this podcast. Whether you're listening, whether it be Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, or YouTube, please consider subscribing and following to get up to date with all of our latest content. Today, we have a banger, and you won't want to miss it. He's a former professional racing driver and our broadcaster and commentator. It's Tom Gaymor. How's it going, Tom?
Yeah, what a welcome. It's going well, actually. The sun's shining. We're out of lockdown. And I'm looking forward to getting some motorsport under my belt. It's been a difficult year, I think, for everyone, hasn't it? And so, you know, moving forward, I was doing a bit of Super GT from Japan this weekend and Formula E as well. And now we've got some really good motorsport coming up over the next couple of months. So I'm looking forward to being a part of that. Yeah,
definitely. So I think it'd be nice to start at the start of your career and how you got into racing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 39 now, so I have to go back many a decade. But the start of my career came really late. So the perception is in motorsport is that you have to get involved in the sport at a really young and tender age. But essentially, it's not for everyone. And I didn't come from a motorsport family, so you're wearing an England rugby jersey. I grew up around rugby, and my granddad was the England rugby doctor. And so after school, I was getting picked up and going to do my homework at Twickenham Stadium and watching the England rugby team train. So it wasn't until my teenage years when I got involved with karting at a local level, Sandown Park, which is just over the bridge from Hampton Court in Surrey. And I got involved with Formula 6. Roger Sheffield, bless him, who's just passed away, ran a really tight ship and a wonderful, cost-effective and affordable entry-level championship, four-stroke karting. And there were a few of us doing it. Christian Backerud, Duncan Tappy, Sam Bird, myself. And we had a really good time. And Andrew Crichton ran it. So he's up at Anglesey now running the circuit up in North West Wales. And it was a great learning curve, but a fun opportunity as well. And it wasn't until then I won the Le Filière competition to go and race cars in France and live in Le Mans at the age of 17 that my career really took off. And without that opportunity, I wouldn't be sat here now because I didn't have, from a family perspective, the funds to progress from what was a hobby, if you like, albeit a serious one, from four-stroke karting into the sort of upper echelons of the sport.
Yeah, I think that's with lots of sports these days. They can take a lot of money. And I think that's what maybe stops some people from pursuing their careers because it's so expensive. I mean, it's glad to hear that you got some sort of funding to help you with your career.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And also sports becoming more and more time intensive. So the ages of which participation at a top level is seen are becoming less and less and less. And if you're participating at the top level, it's very time invasive. And so we're heavily reliant on parents that sort of being able to balance all their work responsibilities, the lives of other siblings, to kind of donate all of their time to that young child to go and do whatever it is, travel around the country and be competing. So yeah, I think sport is a fabulous platform and a fabulous environment to learn so many values and morals and skills. But I'd like to see it you know, not taken as seriously at such a young age and being more accessible to more.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's what sport is at the end of the day. It should be for everyone, not just for people who have money as such. I think maybe, so after, would you be able to light your injury that you had and how it enlightened your broadcasting and open that door?
Yeah, so my injury was something that stopped me in my tracks, quite literally. I had a spondylolisthesis, which 20% of the world's population have, but 20% of the world's population don't drive cars around in a circle, hitting brick walls at high speed. So once I did that, my lumbar spine effectively crumbled away where the bone hadn't formed properly. And there was no bony union between L4, L5 and S1. So I had to have reconstructive spinal surgery, metal framework put in, bone grafts from my pelvis. And it was a really difficult time because you almost, because of the invasive nature of the surgery, you almost have to not learn to do everything again, but just simple things like activating your hip flexors or your glutes or walking up the stairs, you can't do. And the rehabilitation time was really mentally draining and very, very difficult. And at that stage in my life, I donated everything into one pot, and that was to try and be a professional racing driver. And I was well on the way to doing that. And so to have that snatched away, and the realization that I was going to have to rethink what it was that I wanted to do was really challenging. So people always talk about the physical aspect of the injury, but I would say the mental journey was the hardest element. And I do a lot of work now with athletes or whoever it is, police officers, who have had catastrophic injuries and are moving through the rehabilitation processes and may or may not return back into the environment that they were once in, because that's a really difficult journey. But the opportunity to commentate came along, and it wasn't immediate, because if I wasn't going to drive, I had like a petulant and emotional reaction to the point that I didn't want to be around the sport. I found it really hard to go and watch my friends doing something that I wanted to do and I could no longer do. So it's a bit like having a relationship. You see that the person that you love with someone else is really difficult. So that's my little analogy. So initially I went to work for Getty Images. And I did some work at Getty Images and realized that a 9-to-5 job was quite difficult and and maybe not something that I wanted to do. So I came back to motorsport with my tail between my legs, and I was very lucky to get an opportunity to commentate, and that opportunity has been really kind to me, and I'll be forever grateful to Simon Reed who gave me that opportunity.
Yeah, so I imagine you've had some amazing experiences commentating over the last 10 years or so. And is there one opportunity that stands out to you at your best moment, maybe?
Yeah, I think commentary or working in TV is brilliant, because it gives you an adrenaline rush. So it's very akin to being in the car. So I get that rush that you get when you're about to be a part of a live broadcast, and that is really something I enjoy. I enjoy that buzz. It's chaotic. So live TV is really chaotic for all the best laid plans. It never goes in a straight line, and you're forever trying to keep loads of plates spinning whilst the wheels fall off. And essentially no one tells you how to do it. No one teaches you how to do it. So it's a bit like learning to swim whilst everyone's watching you. You're not going to be an expert straight off, but let's hope you don't sink. So you do need thick skin, because you're learning a trade whilst people are watching and are critiquing you. And with today's day and age of social media, you tend to get more in the way of critiques than you do in the way of positive praise. So that side of things is quite challenging, but I wouldn't swap it for the world. And in terms of being a part of iconic broadcasts, I think last year, for example, was a year where I was incredibly lucky. I led the Le Mans 24-hour coverage. So for Eurosport, which is essentially where the whole audience that wants to watch Le Mans is centered, a bit like Tour de France. You know, Eurosport's iconic for the Le Mans 24-hour coverage, for the Tour de France coverage. So to lead that coverage is special, but also to lead the Indy 500 coverage for Sky Sports. So I did that 2 years ago. Last year, I was the colour alongside Alex Jacks, who's the Channel 4 F1 commentator this year. So being involved with the Indy 500, I think, I've been really lucky to cover 2 blue ribbon events in 1 year. So that for me is special, because my dream was to drive at the top level. I never got that opportunity, but I'm still at the top level. And that is something that I always remind myself about, but I always like to tell other people about, because it doesn't matter what your dream is. It's important to have flexibility and to be thankful for the opportunities that you get. So my dream was to drive. I've swapped the steering wheel for the microphone. I'm still at the top level. I'm still in and around the environment with my friends, and I play an integral part in the weekend's format, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, that must be amazing, thinking that you've had this injury, but it's opened a new door to this broadcasting career, which of course has treated you very well, working at the top. It might not have been what you wanted, but you're still working around what was your dream.
Yeah, and it becomes what you want. It becomes your dream. So I absolutely love what I do. I love the fact that you have an input in terms of the narrative, that you can shape a narrative, that you can talk about and inform people around what is essentially a passion. So you have great responsibility. I really, I really embrace that. My dream when I first went into broadcasting was to maybe be in front of camera.
Yeah.
But I feel I have much more of a creative input, that I can really shape a narrative, being the commentary, being the voice. And so as I've gone along, really fallen in love with the commentary side of things. And I don't, never say never, but I don't ever really see myself going away from commentary. I absolutely love the commentary.
Yeah, definitely. And I think because you've had experience in racing and stuff, I think you have the mind of what they're doing. Like, for example, when I'm watching the snooker as my personal interest, again, you see that they see things that you don't. So
Yes.
do you see things that the racing drivers see, but the audience at home might not see?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And also, as I've transitioned from the racing driver role into maybe the lead role, I do more lead commentary now.
Yeah,
I have an idea of the information that I want to get out of the pundit next to me. So I think being from a driving background gives me a lot of versatility, but it does give you that insight. You do see things, you do feel things, you can sense what's going to happen because you've been in that situation. And you're absolutely right when you use other sports to contextualize your point there, because I watch cricket, for example, and you hear the commentator saying, well, that was the googly, or that was the wrong one, and I'm thinking, how have they spotted that?
Yeah.
but they do, and that's the insight that draws you in as a fan, because you then, well, what's that? How did that? And I like that. So to be able to sort of deliver that insight and knowledge to the fans watching is a privilege, definitely.
Yeah. So what's been your best resource that's helped you along the way of your broadcasting?
So I think being inquisitive, definitely being inquisitive. So I've been fortunate enough to have an incredible mentor in Simon Reed. So Simon is the voice, of tennis on BBC and Eurosport, and has a very well established and successful and famous career. And he was always very, very kind to me in the sense that when I was inquisitive, he would spend time to answer my questions, to coach me, to mentor me, to do various different things. But I always say, if I'm going to succeed or fail, I want to do it my way.
Yeah.
And I think I didn't want to come into broadcasting and be a second-rate version of someone else. I wanted to try and do it my way, and to use the advice and the coaching that I had from trusted people around me to shape my way, rather than trying just to be like someone else. And I think you get found out if you're trying to be someone else. You need to put your own individual stamp on it. And if you look at all the bastions of broadcasting or the great voices of sport, they've all been very individual, and they've been quirky, or you remember them for various different reasons. And I wanted to try and get Tom Gaymor across, the character and the individual behind the voice, as much as trying to be as polished as possible. But as we remember from Murray Walker, the great late Murray, and we sadly just lost Murray, but it's not about getting it right. That's the biggest mistake that people make, is they get so tight and so worried about being right and perfect. There's no such thing. Live TV is chaotic. You do get it wrong. We're all humans, but it's the way you get it wrong that counts, and getting your character across, and the audience relate to you and love you. And I think that's really important.
Well, I think it's best always to be to yourself. You know, if you're a copy, you're never going to be the best of someone else. But if you're yourself, people can only like you for who you're being yourself. And I know that my next question, that we've covered a bit of COVID, but has COVID affected your job massively, or have you been quite lucky as such than other people?
Yeah, I think I've been lucky and unlucky.
Yeah.
In the sense that COVID, being a global pandemic, has affected people greatly. And there's people that have lost loved ones. There's people that have lost their own lives. There's people that have lost everything. And for them, it must be utterly unbearable in terms of recognizing what's happened. For me, I've lost a lot of work, and it's been difficult. Being a limited director, you don't get the government support, so you fall through the gaps. I'm sure you might have seen on the news, there was millions of self-employed people from various different industries that fell through the gaps. So that side of things was difficult. When you are in my position, you are freelance. So I am not contracted to a broadcaster, and I don't have a salary off the back of that. So you do become used to things being a bit seat of your pants at times. And when you are working for yourself, you never quite know where your next paycheck's going to be. Otherwise, you'd be there now. And so it ebbs and flows throughout the year, and you become more comfortable with that unknown. And I'm always talking to young commentators, because that's the first thing that they ask is, how do you cope or manage with those situations? Because it doesn't help you sleep at night. It does make you anxious and it is difficult to manage. But I've been fortunate enough to be involved in the industry for quite a few years. Moving into COVID, it's been extreme in terms of managing that anxiety and managing that worry about when things are going to start again. So, for example, this weekend I was meant to be commentating on the 24 de Moto, the Le Mans, the FIM EWC Endurance World Championship Le Mans event. So it's basically Le Mans for bikes, but it's been cancelled. And we knew that 2 weeks ago when Macron addressed the nation and put the nation into national lockdown. I'm meant to be doing Oschersleben, the 6-hour event for EWC, but that's now been cancelled. So I lose count of the amount of events this year that have been on the radar that you're really desperate for in terms of income, but then get shelved because of understandable and valid reasons. But it's hard when you're trying to pay a mortgage and to survive. That said, I've been really lucky because sport really did rocket off the taxi rank when we were allowed to at the end of last summer. So I worked 3 months last year, but they were a really bumper 3 months. And that gave me some earning capacity to try and cover off some of the bills for the rest of the year. And I'm hoping that that's much the same in 2021. Otherwise, I'll be looking for a new job.
So our second to last question is one off me. And I saw on your Twitter last night that we were doing some commentary for Eurosport. I saw snooker in the left-hand corner on a TV.
Yes.
Who is your favourite player?
Well, I love Ronnie because we talk about characters, and I just love him as a character. I mean, I'm fortunate enough when I worked for Eurosport, to be in and around the snooker fraternity, so to speak. Less so now because of the COVID restrictions, but ordinarily they would be in for the qualifiers in the studio that I'm in, and then they go on site for the actual main event. So I'm constantly around the team at Eurosport, and their camaraderie, their jokes, and the way they conduct themselves is brilliant. I really enjoy their company. But in terms of my outright favourite, definitely Ronnie. Ronnie Wood actually turned up at the Eurosport studios a couple of years ago when I was there with his dog. He turned up unannounced at reception and basically said he'd like to go on air and support his friend. And I remember the AP, the associate producer, thinking this is either going to make or break me. We're now going to stick Ronnie Wood on TV, and he's either going to say something genius or something controversial. So they took the risk, and it became, a regular fixture. And Ronnie Wood does sit on the Eurosport sofa every now and then and talk snooker, because he's really good friends with the Rocket.
Yeah. And the last question, which is going to be my signature question for the show: what does success mean to you?
Being happy. And I think it's easy for me to say that at 39. And had you said that to my younger self, I would have looked at you as though you had three heads and that you were a bit wide of the mark. I think as I've learnt throughout my life and spoken to other athletes or individuals that are involved in the corporate world, success is essentially for me about being happy. I've done so many things in my life where I've tried to be successful, and I look back on it, and the one regret I don't have is I didn't enjoy it. And if you speak to so many athletes predominantly, and Johnny Wilkinson was talking to Bear Grylls recently on ITV about this, where he just didn't enjoy his career. And it wasn't until he got to France for the later years where he looked back and played for the right reasons. And I think you get, as you push up through the ladder, you just become so linear around outcome, and you forget the reasons why you're doing it, and/or you don't have the opportunity to enjoy it. So jubilation or celebration are then swapped for relief. And you live your life in fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, fear of losing your opportunity, and it's a vicious circle, and it's a race to the bottom in terms of your well-being. So for me now, I treat most things as though it's my last opportunity. I just look to enjoy it, and I don't focus on outcome. So if we focus on outcome, whether or not it's, are people going to like me? Am I going to be good enough? Do I know enough? If we focus on all those things, we tend to have an emotive reaction around fearing failure. And that emotive reaction and that fear of failure takes the enjoyment away, and you don't sleep, you don't eat, you don't do this, and actually you're relieved when it's done as opposed to enjoying it. And so I tend to remove the outcome completely, and I just focus on the process. So I just want to just map out how and what I'm going to do, and I just focus on delivering the process. And if you deliver on the process and you enjoy it, the outcome tends to take care of itself.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one thing I've learned in lockdown is that you can't take things for granted. Having a good time in March last year, and then lockdown, it's like you've got to take things for granted, not take things for granted, because they're not always going to be there.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't know what tomorrow holds. And you don't want to live in fear. You don't want to be today was the tomorrow that you worried about yesterday. But you do want to make sure that you're present, that you enjoy everything.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's my secret to success. Really good question, actually.
Yeah, thank you. And we're coming up to time now, so I'd like to thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure to interview you today. And would you like to let anyone know how they can connect with you online?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't do too much in the way of social media because I'm trying to disconnect to reconnect. But I'm on Twitter, so you can follow me on Twitter at Tom Gaymor, TomGaymor, and keep in touch. I always try and answer as many tweets as I possibly can. I love the engagement on Twitter, and that's, you know, we connected that way, I think, didn't we? And so I'll always answer, and I'll always try and help and support everyone. And, you know, for you, well done for being courageous.
Thank you very much.
It's difficult to be heard, to create opportunity, but if you don't set about with a roadmap and actually doing it and being courageous and asking, you definitely won't reach your end goal. So well done for reaching out, and well done for putting together a really good podcast.
Thank you. And thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure. Thanks everyone for listening. Wherever you're listening, please subscribe and follow. I'll leave Tom's links in the description on YouTube, and I will see you guys next week for the next episode of the Ryan Chatfield Show. See you guys soon.